We're going to be looking at some pretty controversial subjects here this morning. If anybody is skeptical, all they need to do is go to, I don't think I'll name any names, but all they need to do is to go to one of the large chain bookstores here in Cork and go to their religious section, and they will see that Christianity is hardly represented at all. You know, only about 2 shelves devoted to Christianity, whereas there's 28 shelves devoted to New Age spirituality. And if you include the health, New Age books in the health section, it goes up to 49. So based on the law of the market, supply and demand, it shows me that New Age spirituality has more or less replaced Christianity, at least here in Cork. I don't know about the more rural areas, but in the more urban areas, tomorrow we're going to go to Dublin, and I'll be able to check out the bookstores there. But here in Cork, you can see that this is a very, very profound phenomenon. We're going to look at the ramifications of it this morning. This is a man named Terry Mattingly. He was a Christian writer. And he says the New Age didn't crest in popularity and then disappear. It soaked in to society. And that's what we're seeing now. We're not talking about cults. We're not talking about fringe religious organizations like the Hare Krishnas or whatever. We're talking about a situation where these practices and this belief system literally becomes embedded in society in general. And there is proof that this is not a conspiracy theory. Now, there are a lot of seminars around the world, and you get people saying, pretty bizarre things like, I've watched a lot of these on the internet. And there was one speaker who said that there's the Vatican has this center in Arizona where they're in touch with UFOs. So, how can you prove that? I mean, there's no way you can prove that, unless you actually go there and hang out and watch UFOs come and go, right? But anyhow, these things we're going to be looking at this morning can be backed up by scholarly evidence. This is a book called The Making of the New Spirituality by James A. Herrick. And Dr. Herrick is a professor in one of the universities in the U.S. And by the way, if you're really interested in this subject, you might want to order this book. This is one of the best books out there. And he says, Dr. Herrick's book says, the revealed word tradition, that's Christianity, is being slowly dismantled in society and being replaced by the new religious synthesis, which is another term for New Age. See, that term New Age isn't really used much anymore. It's more of a term you heard in the 70s and 80s. And it became somewhat of a hackneyed phrase, people would make fun of it. And so it was dropped by most people that promote this type of thing. You don't hear that much anymore. Now it's known as spirituality or body, mind, spirit. How many of you heard that term, body, mind, spirit? Okay, that's usually the term that you find. That's what it's under in the bookstore I mentioned earlier. And this book backs up the idea that, and this is all over the Western world. It's not found just in one particular country. No matter where you go in the Western world, this is the situation that's being discovered. How many of you have heard somebody say they're spiritual but not religious? Oh, not many, huh? Anyhow, that's a term that's being bandied about these days. And this is a book called Spiritual But Not Religious by another professor, Robert C. Fuller. According to Fuller's book, huge numbers of Americans and Europeans have embraced what he refers to as unchurched spirituality, which is in effect New Age spirituality. You don't really need churches to do the kind of things that we're going to be looking at here. In fact, churches are designed basically for the worship of God, a personal God. Whereas New Age spirituality is more or less individual. There's no really need for a collective gathering of people. And I should tell you what that term New Age really means. It's from astrology. Astrology is a big part of occult philosophy, and And they believe that for the last 2,000 years we've been in what's called the Piscean age. And now we're under the Aquarian age, the age of Aquarius. So that's what the term New Age means, that we're leaving one astrological age and moving into another astrological age. And this age of Aquarius has specific spiritual connotations for humanity. This is another, I know a lot of my documentation here is centered around, the U.S., but it's also true of anywhere in the Western world, as I found in my research here. This is a book called American Veda. Now, the Vedas are the Hindu scriptures. The Hindu Bible is called the Vedas. And in it says, Hindu mysticism has profoundly affected the worldview of millions of Westerners and radically altered the religious landscape. And I've seen considerable evidence of that in my trip here. Is when we went to that seaside place the other day, I found that every little village in Ireland has something that pertains, some center or some classes that pertain to this type of spirituality. This guy is a journalist for the New York Times, and he wrote a book called Bad Religion, How We Became a Nation of Heretics. And he says, the slow motion collapse of traditional faith, that's Christianity, and the rise of a variety of pseudo-Christianities, that means phony Christianity, that stroke our egos, indulge our follies, and encourage our worst impulses. So that kind of speaks for itself. Okay, Baylor University, which is a Baptist university in Texas, did a survey. There we go. Did a survey, and according to the survey, up to 26 million Americans now view God as a cosmic force rather than a personal being. And this is more or less the view of God that is in New Age spirituality, that God is a cosmic force that runs through everything that exists. Everything that is manifest in the universe contains an element of God. So this would be more adherents than Episcopalians, Lutherans. This is a common thing that's a galloping PowerPoint. It just kind of moves on its own. I think it's kind of time to, do it, but bear with me here. So, more adherents than Episcopalians, Lutherans, Presbyterians, and United Methodists combined. Now, these are all major denominations, in the U.S. and probably in Great Britain, Australia, places like that. But so we're looking at an enormous number of people here that have accepted this as their spiritual outlook. And to make that point clear, I think I mentioned earlier the law of the market is somewhat annoying, but just have patience. I don't think there's any way we can get around it. There's a chain bookstore in the U.S. called Borders, and their New Age section, basically metaphysics, was all that and all that. 65 shelves devoted specifically to New Age spirituality. 65 shelves. So even if the CEO of Borders was sympathetic to this, he wouldn't devote 65 shelves to a subject that no one would buy. This shows that there's a tremendous interest in this in the public. And what's even more shocking is all the major New Age authors were not in this section. They were in the self-help section. We're just going to look at one single denomination. When I use the term New Age, it's like a wide gamut of, they all kind of believe the same thing. It's very mystical, it's centered around mysticism, but the main component that makes it New Age is that the perception that God is in everything, and it's specifically everybody, that divinity is within. So this is just one aspect of it. You're going to be kind of shocked when you see how many people are interested in this. This is Gerald Gardner was an Englishman, and he was the founder of modern Wicca. Wicca is the term for witchcraft. And he wrote this book back in the 1950s called Witchcraft Today. And at that time, witchcraft was, it was just almost, it died out. It was like 1/100th of 1/10 of 1% of the population. It was just a small smattering. So he wrote this book, and it kind of revived interest, especially in the 1960s with the youth counterculture. So now there's this, some decades later, there's this website called The Witch's Voice. And this is a website devoted to Wicca, witchcraft. And they came online in 1997, and since then they've had 480 million hits. 480 million. Now that's roughly 500 million. So people that go to this website, notice it says Neo-Pagan News Networking. This is where you go to advertise or post articles or whatever. But they've had nearly 500 million hits since basically 1997. And they're getting 500,000 hits a week now. 500,000. So that's just one denomination. In bookstores now, there's a section called Teen. It seems to have a mind of its own here. Called Teen Paranormal Romance. And you've heard of the Twilight series, and vampires, werewolves, that type of zombies. Well, there's a very strong element in this directed at teenage girls, which focus on witchcraft. And this is one of them, Once a Witch. This is, a lot of young girls are embracing the idea that it's cool to be a witch. You can't be a vampire, because there are no such things as vampires. And you can't be a werewolf or a zombie, but you can be a witch. A witch is somebody who has supernatural powers, so that is available. This is, you might find this surprising, the Harry Potter series were, absolutely enormously popular. Every kid that was around was reading them, even a few adults. We might find it interesting to know that in the third book, The Prisoner of Azkaban, there's actual witchcraft. This isn't made up, this isn't fantasy. It's on page 297, and Harry Potter is in a divination class. And the professor says, crystal gazing is a particularly refined art. We shall start by practicing relaxing the conscious mind and externalize, so as to clear the inner eye and the superconscious. Now that term superconscious is actually a term from witchcraft. That is actually, you can, Google it and see the correlation. That is real witchcraft there. So feeding this explosion of interest in Wicca is, I believe, our books like the Harry Potter series, because they, actually the term, how many of you have heard the term muggles? The term muggles, okay, in the Harry Potter books, a muggle is someone who's not interested in being a wizard. A muggle is someone who doesn't gravitate toward being, a mystical type person. And muggles are portrayed as being very backward, very ignorant, kind of you don't want to be a muggle because you're not cool, you're not with it. So just on that alone, it kind of subtly projects an image that, to be cool, you need to be in touch with supernatural powers. You have some kind of it's going kind of. Okay, what exactly is mysticism? It is the belief that direct knowledge of God, spiritual truth, or ultimate reality, the knowledge of God, can be attained through subjective experience. I know that sounds kind of intellectual there, but what we're dealing with here, things like Wicca. Wiccans don't just accept things intellectually, they actually alter their consciousness. They actually go into mystical states and experience things. Remember, I talked to a witch once, and she told me how the group she was in, there were a number of them who were, relatively new, and there were 3 who were advanced, and the 3 who were advanced as she put it, manifested the goddess, or one of the deities of Wicca, and she said, it's like every square inch of her skin felt like it was on fire. And she said, I wasn't ready for that, And that's what I'm talking about. It wasn't just somebody talking, and it wasn't intellectual. It was an actual manifestation of something supernatural. And I could tell by the way she looked that she actually had had this experience. She wasn't just, you can tell if somebody's making up stories. And it was, to me, it was quite alarming. Okay, the essence of mysticism is the practice of meditation. Now, meditation is talked about in the Bible, and then there's a secular term for meditation, and that just means to think on, just to dwell on. And everybody does that kind of meditation every day. You're always meditating on some kind of subject, Your mind is never completely blank. You're always thinking about something. And meditating is when you really think about something, like, if you've had a fight with your boss, and you're going in the next day, and on your way to work, you're wondering, you're thinking about what's going to happen, he's going to yell at you or fire you. Anyhow, that's secular, normal meditation. But this term here in mysticism, it's the exact opposite. It's not thinking. It's switching off your mind. And this is done in basically 3 ways. The tools of meditation are reciting a mantra. Now, a mantra is a word or phrase that's repeated over and over again, usually around 20 minutes. And when you do this, you can think. You can have a progression of thoughts. And it doesn't matter what it is. The mind is focused on something that is static, and it's that concentration that it's like damming a river or a stream or something. You put a dam, the water can't flow through and it just backs up. That's what we're dealing with. Or focusing on the breath. The second one is going to be very important in what's coming up here shortly. The breath acts as a mantra. By the way, the word mantra is a Sanskrit word. It means to be liberated from thought. And of course, the third one are percussion sounds, or drumming. And that is done in quite a few places, especially in the third world, or in Sufi circles, or Muslim mysticism. They focus on the percussion sound. Okay, the purpose of meditation. Meditation is the doorway between worlds, the pathway between dimensions. You can't really be a New Ager in the real sense of the word without engaging in meditation. Someone who is a New Ager, unless they're actually engaging and going between these worlds or going between dimensions, are only a potential New Ager. They may be interested in it, but you have to actually do this to be truly in the New Age camp. And this has to be understood. This has to be emphasized. Otherwise, well, a lot of people would think it was kind of ridiculous, even, in the Western world, even with these explanations. But people that don't understand mysticism, they think this is just intellectual. They tend to dismiss it like, oh, this is just, a bunch of weirdos. But there's a continuity to the meditation experience. In other words, if it was just their imagination, say they were blanking out their minds, and if it was just their imaginations, every one of these people would have different experiences, right? But there's a continuity. In other words, they all have the same experience, which means they're actually getting in touch with something that is there. Okay, meditation is the key, the indispensable key to the highest states of awareness. The Expanding Light Retreat Center, one of the New Age centers there in California. So it is, without a doubt, the core of New Age experience and practice. And I have to make this, profoundly accepted, because we're going to be looking at some things in a few minutes that tie into this. Okay, here's the experience. It has the name of my book there in the bottom, but this is from a New Age source. This is a woman who did this. She said, one starts by silencing the mind. For many, this is not easy. But when the mind has become silent and still, it is then possible for the divine force to descend and enter into the receptive individual. First it trickles, and later it comes in waves. And there are many different names for this. One of the most common one is transformation. Transformation experience. So when you put yourself in this altered state of consciousness, it makes it possible. She calls it the divine force, but see, that's where the controversy is. Is this really the divine? Okay, the meditation explosion. We're going to be looking at how meditation has become quite normal in Western society. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the talk here, that going into this bookstore here in Cork, there were 28 shelves devoted strictly to meditation. By New Age, it wasn't just a matter of using certain lingo or certain words. It was a matter of what we're looking at here, going between worlds. And that meditation has exploded to a very, very large degree. This is Time magazine in the U.S., The Science of Meditation. This is, we have to see if we can fix this for the afternoon show. We have galloping PowerPoint. Did it again. Yeah, Time magazine, The Science of Meditation. New Age mumbo jumbo, not for millions of Americans. Not for millions of Americans who meditate for health and well-being. And this appears to be one of the, I'm not going to mess with it. This appears to be the main draw for people that engage in meditation, is health and well-being. You know, relatively few people go to it strictly for, because they want to change their religion. Some do, you know, a lot of people are enticed into the religious aspect of it. But most people that get into meditation get into it purely for, you know, stress reduction. How many of you have heard the term mindfulness? Oh, quite a few. Yeah, quite a few. Mindfulness. Well, this is one specific practice and term that is becoming extraordinarily popular now. And it's not, you know, people used to say, now be mindful of your manners. You know, which means, you know, be careful of what you say, or, you know, mindful used to mean to be, you know, remember something. Well, the term mindfulness is actually from Buddhism. It's one of the pillars of Buddhism. It's called eight limbs or something like that. It's called right mindfulness. And the term mindfulness is referring to Zen Buddhist meditation, focusing on the breath. Any book you see on mindfulness will always have the idea of focusing on the breath. It's directly from Zen Buddhism. And it appears to be having a particular impact in psychological counseling. I've talked to counselors and they back this up, that is now, how many heard the term cognitive therapy? I was, Caroline, I think it was the day before yesterday, I'm walking around, and I actually see this sign and it says cognitive therapy. And I knew what that was. Usually when you see that, it's has something to do with mindfulness. Okay. Drug and alcohol rehabilitation, the health field, sports and fitness, and above all, business and success training. We're going to look at a few books here that are on business and success training that incorporate this, but this covers a wide array of human endeavor, right? That's what I was trying to get across earlier, that we're not dealing with cults. We're not dealing with, you know, small groups of religious eccentrics who draw people into their particular group. These fields are the very essence of modern society, and these fields are being inundated with the idea of mindfulness. This is, Costco is a major wholesale store in the U.S., huge stores, huge. I mean, they go on forever. And they sell things in bulk, and you have to belong to them. You have to pay to go in there. You have to get a card. You can't just go in there and shop. You have to join Costco. Well, this is their July 2014 issue. And by the way, when you go into Costco, there's always, half the town is in there. It's just totally, it's amazed how many people are in there. So I would estimate tens of millions of people belong to Costco. Well, this is their 2014 issue, and notice that this is basically a store, that sells things. This has nothing to do with religion. This is just a business. But yet, in this magazine, they have an article on mindfulness, which I thought was quite weird. Okay, this is the name of the article, Mindful Matters, Meditation is Medicine. And in it, it's been around for centuries and integral to the practice of Buddhism. Yet, until recently, meditation was often regarded as some strange, new agey Eastern mind-body thing. No more. So in essence, a magazine that has to do with selling items to people is making my point here. That when you see something like this in a magazine like that, then you know that it's went mainstream, that it's really being accepted. Okay, again, Time Magazine did an article, The Mindful Revolution. There's even a Mindful magazine that is devoted strictly to this. Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. The Science of Changing Your Brain. So, again, like I mentioned earlier, this is not a conspiracy theory. Anybody that just looks around can see that this is a significant push. Okay, there's even corporate mindfulness training. These are employees of General Foods, a big cereal corporation, and they're having their employees lay on their stomachs, and they're teaching them to focus on their breath and to go into altered states of consciousness. And this is at work. This is seen as promoted as you can be less stressed out, you can be happier. And there's even police departments that are being trained in mindfulness now. I've opened newspapers and there's pictures of police officers, doing something like this. Whole police departments are being trained in mindfulness. This is a book that's on the New York Times bestseller list. It's called Thrive. And this woman, Arianna Huffington, Simon, would you explain what the Huffington Post is for the people that don't?
This is a major newspaper in the U.S.
Yeah. Well, the Huffington Post is also online. How many people have heard of the Huffington Post? Oh, quite a few of you, yeah. Well, this is the Huffington of the Huffington Post, Arianna, and she was, quite rich and quite successful, but she wasn't happy because she was a materialist. And when you're a materialist, money does not make you happy. So she got into mindfulness. And notice she talks about success and creating a life of well-being, wisdom, and wonder. So she has become a major, you might say, guru or advocate of this type of meditation. And you find this book, you don't find this book in the metaphysics section, you find this book in the business section. That's where it's found. She's very active in the corporate world. This gentleman here, Dan Harris, was an anchor for ABC News, the American Broadcasting Corporation. And Dan Harris was seen by millions of people on television. He anchored a major news program, and he was a skeptic. He thought this was a bunch of mumbo, new age mumbo jumbo. And then he got into it, he started doing it, and he became a total advocate, a total, he was convinced that this was the way to have a great life. So he wrote a book, and this book was on the New York Times bestseller list. So we're seeing quite a few people that are reaching a large audience with the idea that Buddhist meditation can make you a lot happier and a lot less stressed and a lot more creative. And it gets worse, and it gets worse. This is a book on chia seeds. Chia seeds is now being seen as, you probably know what I'm talking about, that chia seeds are good for you. This is a book called Chia Vitality. And I was utterly shocked to find that this book contains a chapter on Buddhist meditation, mindfulness meditation. And I thought, well, what does meditation have to do with nutrition, with chia seeds? But they're being melded together, they're being integrated. And you might think, oh, that's just in the U.S., right? That's just U.S. stuff, right? Well, this is in that bookstore I was talking about in Cork here, and there's about, how many? About 30, 40 titles there, right? They had a special display on it, a special table, and I think you can see there it says A Mindful Life, right? You see that? It says A Mindful Life. Every one of those books, and you can see, notice the one in the lower right-hand corner where it shows a woman laying down, kind of a cartoon type thing. Every one of those books is on mindfulness. Every single one of them. And Rachel, I believe, talked to an employee there, one of the people that set these things up, and he told her that mindfulness was now all the rage in Ireland. This was something that really had started a revolution here in Ireland. So it's not just an American phenomenon. And I've seen the covers of national magazines in Germany and France that, you see people meditating on the front cover. And it's European-wide. I mean, Sweden, Denmark, probably Poland, it's just all over the Western world. So, what does this mean for Christians? Okay, the Mindfulness Solution, everyday practices for everyday problems. And this is Ronald Siegel is a psychologist. And notice down there says www.fitnessbookmix.com. So this book is seen as something that is for fitness. But in it he says that, he got into it in the 80s and just a handful of psychologists were involved in. And then he said, and this is in the late 90s, interest exploded overnight all over the world. Now it's important to get that. All over the world, mindfulness is being presented for practically every problem. And like I said, what if it works? I mean, what if it's good for you? This conference here, as you know, is probably seen as being negative for this type of thing, but why? I mean, why would anybody be critical of something that would help millions of people? Well, right here. Mindfulness helps us to connect with God or the divine. And that is a very strong component, that it does have a spiritual aspect to it. It is spiritual at its basic point. But what kind of spiritual? Excuse me. This is from a book called The Pocket Guide to Meditation. And in it, the author says, through meditation, we become attuned to spirit. Now, that term spirit is basically what you find all throughout New Age literature. This is a buzzword. Like Christians will talk about the finished work of Christ, right? New Agers will talk about spirit. And this isn't supposed to be the Holy Spirit of Christianity. This is just spirit. And this is what they mean by it. This is a book called The Beginner's Guide to Mediumship. And you can see there's this picture of a woman, and she looks to be in a meditative state, and there's all these like spirit guides surrounding her. And the book says, meditation is the key to unlocking the door of mediumship. For without meditation, there is no mediumship. Now, mediumship is channeling spirit guides, being connected to spirits. A total and deep trance occurs when the mind is completely blank, when mind chatter has been overridden. If you continue the flow of uninterrupted trance, spirit contact and visions can occur. So in essence, when that book on mindfulness said, let me go back. It helps us to connect with God or the divine. That's what it's talking about. It does not help you connect with the God of the Bible. Okay, Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber is one of the premier intellectuals of New Age spirituality. He was Al Gore. How many of you know Al Gore is? He was Al Gore's favorite New Age author. Al Gore actually became within a hair's breadth of becoming president back in, I think it was the early 2000s, or 2000, yeah, it was the year 2000. And Al Gore was very much into reading Ken Wilber. And he says, if you're doing meditation correctly, you're in for some very rough and frightening times. Meditation as a relaxation response is a joke. Yeah. So in other words, if you're doing it, actually doing it, this is what you're going to get. This is why what he means by rough and frightening. When a meditator is led to expect stress reduction and instead comes to face with his true self, that's a spirit guide, the result can be anything but relaxing. And by true self, the author meant your divine self, your inner divinity, the God within. But in reality, it would be, we'll get to that later. Okay, Time Magazine. This makes my point better than anything. This was in an article on, it was called Ambushed by Spirituality by Marty Kaplan. Now, Marty Kaplan was a secular Jewish screenwriter in Hollywood. And he claims he didn't have a religious bone in his body. He was totally secular, completely non-religious. But he had a habit of biting his nails. So he went to his doctor, and his doctor told him to do, basically, mindfulness meditation. So he started doing it, and he wrote this: I got more from mind-body medicine than I bargained for. I got religion. You don't have to believe in anything. All you have to do is do it. See, that's it. It's like with cults, like with the Mormons, they come to your house and their door or whatever, and they have to intellectually convince you that they have the restored gospel. They do it by intellectual reasons. Same thing with the Jehovah's Witnesses. All these groups are pseudo-Christian groups. They have this intellectual approach. With this, like he said, it bypasses the intellect. All you have to do is focus on your breath, and it creates an opening. All you have to do is do it. And that's why it's growing so fast. There's no moral aspect either. There's nothing, like with Mormons, you can't drink coffee. It's forbidden. If you drink coffee, there's no exaltation in the celestial kingdom, which means you get your own planet. But not with, there's nothing that's taboo in New Age spirituality. Okay, here we go. It ambushed me. It ambushed me. In other words, he wasn't expecting it. You know what an ambush is? That's when you're just walking along and something zaps you, somebody kills you or shoots you or whatever. It ambushed me unwittingly. I was engaging in a practice that has been at the heart of religious mysticism for millenniums. Now I know there is a consciousness that transcends science, a consciousness toward which our species is sputteringly evolving, and that's New Age spirituality. That's what he was told, when he was in these mystical states, that this consciousness is New Age consciousness. Hey, I just noticed something. It's not galloping. Here we go. This is going to be very controversial because yoga has probably been more popular for a longer time than mindfulness. And let me show you the statistics here. 250 million people practice yoga worldwide. Now that is a lot of people. That is a huge number of people. And this is just a very relatively recent phenomenon. the practice of yoga was probably confined just to people in the counterculture up until the early 1980s. And then it kind of struck a chord with baby boomers. There was an article in a magazine that said the boomers turned to yoga. And this is true all over the world, especially, like I said, the Western world. But even now in Iran, the mullahs and ayatollahs in Iran are somewhat alarmed because there are 200 yoga centers in Iran now. So we're seeing this develop in places where, strongholds of Islam, but especially in Europe and North America, Australia, New Zealand, and places like that. Yoga has become very much integrated into society, and it's going to be more integrated because of situations like this. This is a woman named Beth Shaw. That's a logo for her organization, Yoga Fit. Yoga Fit has become the largest yoga school in North America and has trained some 200,000 instructors worldwide. Now, let me emphasize something here. They haven't trained 200,000 people to do yoga. They have trained 200,000 people to teach yoga. 200,000 teachers. So that means if each one of those 200,000 teaches 100 people, that's 20 million people. And if each one teaches that many a year, in 5 years, that's 100 million people. So yoga is not going to disappear anytime soon. Yoga is not a fad. Like I said, the yoga boom started in the early 90s and is still going strong, in 2014. So it is not something that is just going to disappear. And of course, as with mindfulness, the major draw is secular. People are doing yoga because they want to have leaner bodies, more agile bodies, more cardiovascular, that type of thing. So the appeal of yoga is that you would be healthier and more fit. But this is Beth Shaw's book, Yoga Fit, again. And see the title, The Program for a More Powerful, Flexible, and Defined Physique. Now you would think that that's what it would be about, right? Having a flexible physique. But in it, she says, the ancient practice of meditation is as integral to yoga as the poses are. And they have the same intention, not to tune out, but to tune in to a frequency long forgotten or perhaps undiscovered. So we find out that yoga isn't just about getting a better bod, it's about tuning into a frequency. And what does that frequency tell you? And what I'm about to show you here, you can verify this. Go to any yoga studio, go to any yoga teacher and ask them if this is true. And they will say yes. And I think for those of you here in this room, you'll see the contradiction almost immediately. What we are seeking is already at the core of our nature. We are already inherently perfect. It means that God is available fully at each moment simply because God is our true nature. And the reason they say that is that, it's back, that's what yoga means. God is our true nature. How many of you know what the word yoga, not looking at the board there, or screen, how many of you know what the word yoga means? Union. That's it. You looked and I'm just kidding. No, the word yoga means union. It means union, and it means union with God. Union with God. But it is not union with the God of the Bible. At the beginning and end of most yoga classes, I used to think it was all, but then I found out some don't, but in most of them, see how they put their hands together there like they're going to say grace? They do that, and then the teacher will bow down and go, namaste. How many have heard that term, namaste? And then the students will bow down with their hands like that, and they'll go namaste back. And I believe every yoga class, or most of them, begin and end with that. And what that means is the God in me bows down to the God in you. The God in me bows down to the God in you. And this is the essence of what yoga believes, is that God is our true nature, that God is in every single person that exists. And the reason they do the exercises, they're called asanas, the reason they do the exercises is to limber them up so they can meditate. That's why they stretch. Yoga is not primarily a exercise philosophy, it's a spiritual philosophy. So, some of the leading figures in the occult world were major advocates of yoga. This is Alice Bailey. Alice Bailey actually, you might find this interesting, Alice Bailey actually coined the term New Age. She was an English woman, I think she's from Manchester, and she got into a Theosophical Society, and she channeled something like 19 books from a spirit guide on this coming New World religion that was going to sweep the world. And she commented on yoga. She said, the yogi, or the one who has achieved union, for yoga is the science of union, knows himself as he is in reality. He knows himself to be past all controversy, God. Past all controversy. In other words, there's no doubt about it. There's no controversy at all that someone who has someone who has done yoga and mastered it knows himself to be God. That is the essence of yoga, and it gets even more chilling. How many of you heard of Aleister Crowley? Quite a few. This is Aleister Crowley. He was known as the wickedest man in the world by the British press. He was into all sorts of occult activities. He was known as the 20th century's foremost proponent of occultism. And a lot of your groups like Black Sabbath, a lot of these heavy metal satanic groups pay homage to him. But he was a very, very accomplished yogi. And he actually did lectures on it. You can buy these lectures. And on the back of it says, the most scientific and informative work on yoga ever written. And these were, I don't know if that's a DVD, now that it says written, I don't know if that's a, oh yeah, I think they were lectures, so he probably had them written down. But yeah, Aleister Crowley, 8 lectures on yoga. So Aleister Crowley was into yoga and promoted it. Okay, Reiki. Now we're getting into something even more supernatural. Reiki is a Japanese word, and in the West they'll say it means universal life energy. But in essence, in Japanese it's the generic word for the occult. You know, it means like spiritual or hidden wisdom, or even God. You know, it can be defined as God or spiritual energy, but in the Japanese sense, not in the Western sense. So Reiki is another thing that's become very popular. But again, with Reiki, we find the following connection. This is the Everything Reiki book. During the Reiki attunement process, the avenue that is open within the body to allow Reiki to flow through also opens up the psychic communication centers, which are known as chakras. This is why many Reiki practitioners report having verbalized channel communications with the spirit world. Reiki guides are a group of discarnate, non-physical healers that take part in every Reiki healing. The Reiki 1 practitioner is probably not aware of them, but with Reiki 2 they begin to make themselves known. In Reiki 3 they are running the whole show. And that's the master level. That's where you get initiated into it, is the 3rd level. You go to a Reiki master and they initiate you into it. Here's picture of what it's like. That's the Reiki News magazine. And there, woman's laying on the table there, and there's the Reiki channeler channeling this energy into him. It flows, supposedly it flows through them. It comes from, these other realms. It flows through the person's head, the crown chakra, through the body, out through the hands, and into the person who's laying down there. And this article says, during every attunement ceremony, I am always aware of the presence of my Reiki guides. And as you can see on the magazine there, you see where it says teaching Reiki to children. Teaching Reiki to children. So the Reiki guides are involved in every attunement. And this woman lives right in my area. She lives in a suburb of Portland, Oregon. And she looks really nice, doesn't she? You know, she looks really wholesome, and like she could be somebody's mom, right? Usually when you think of spirit guides, you don't think of someone that looks like her. But anyhow, she says, I work with as many as 20 spirit guides during my Reiki treatments. They are my spiritual family. Many Reiki practitioners can feel the presence of their Reiki guides. They're her spiritual family. Reiki once belonged to everyone. The Reiki guides want it to be so again. Raven Keys, she's a very popular Reiki master, and she's the author of a book called The Healing Power of Reiki. And she is a hypnotherapist, meditation teacher, and workshop leader internationally. Looks like she's looking up at something. She's kind of gazing up. Kind of an interesting picture, but she was voted the most popular Reiki master in New York City by New York Magazine. Dr. Oz wrote the foreword for her book, The Healing Power of Reiki. How many know who Dr. Oz is? Okay, probably not many. Yeah, he has a TV show in the U.S., and he's seen by millions of people every day. It's a daily TV show. Anyhow, he wrote the foreword to this book. And this is what she says. We all have a right to connect with our spirit guides. It's a right. You have a right to connect with your spirit guides. Every person interested in Reiki can make a personal connection with a guide. This is a spirit who is the overseer of your Reiki experiences and is invaluable to those of us who practice Reiki. Your Reiki master in spirit is a powerful being on whom you can depend. So again, you know, over and over again, that Reiki is connected with this view that there are spirit guides that are actually the power behind Reiki. And as I've been finding out, Reiki is popular in Ireland. Reiki is extremely popular. And when in the Crosshaven, you know, where you're going into the grocery store there's actually an advertisement for a Reiki center there. I mean, Reiki is everywhere. So this is kind of unfortunate. I spoke at a conference in England before I came here, and there was a man from Ireland, I think he was a pastor. He actually had cast a spirit out of a woman, a Reiki spirit out of her, and he was explaining it. So we got the video, but we couldn't get the audio to work. So what I have to do is, I apologize, I'll have to show you the video, and just explain what's going on. Actually, it's very powerful, and I'll do my best to, say it the way he said it, but he actually did this our conference was on Friday. He had actually done this the Monday before, just a few days before. This woman was having problems. She was actually going to a Christian church, and she was having some kind of problem, and this gentleman and another gentleman were dealing with her, and they found out that she had went to a Reiki channeler, to a Reiki healer, and she had gotten this spirit as a result of going to a Reiki healer. So we'll see if this, will it play? Okay, we'll see what goes on here. Well, I guess it's not even playing. I guess it won't even play, but I can just tell you then. Yeah, he made contact with his spirit. I know this sounds kind of far-fetched, but I believe him after what you've just seen, especially. And this woman started to squeal. She started squealing, and her hand went like this. He said it was like a claw. And she started squealing, and the spirit came up out of her. And after it left her, she returned to normal. She stopped squealing. It was actually the spirit, the demonic spirit, that was squealing. So there was actually an exorcism, and this was directly connected with Reiki. Now, I thought that would have been, as you can see, we've had technical difficulties. But as you can see, Reiki is very much connected with spirit guides, and I was going to share this with you after seeing that, but you can kind of imagine what that would be like. Well, this portion here kind of shows the significance of this. The fact that Reiki has become such a popular practice, and huge numbers of people are being impacted. Actually, was able to buy this shortly after I became involved in New Age research back in 1984. I think I got this about 85 or 86. There was a school teacher, public school teacher in Portland there, who had injured her shoulder in a skiing accident and went to a Reiki channeler for healing. Very much like Marty Kaplan, the guy that bit his nails and was told to meditate to stop doing it. So this woman went to a Reiki channeler because she had shoulder problems, and she wound up with a spirit guide. A spirit guide was passed on to her. And, she wrote this book called Attuning, or it was a booklet, it wasn't a book, Attuning to Inner Guidance. It was self-published by this woman, and she had this to say: "The following are wisdoms excerpted from my journal of channelings from my inner teacher." And the subtitle was Listening Deeply Within. So what you're about to see is basically a message from a Reiki spirit who is talking through her to the general. She's sharing this with the general public, her fellow New Agers. She probably didn't think that a Christian would get a hold of this. So this Reiki spirit is saying, when the coming together time is here, you'll all slip into gear without much resistance to each other. That induction will come as a snap when enough of you are united in spirit. So apparently there's something called the coming together time that is up the road a ways. And this is what the Reiki spirits are working toward. That when enough of you, that's humanity, are united in spirit, and that means under their control, then this coming together time will happen in a snap. Humanity, you'll all slip into gear without much resistance. So when enough people, through mindfulness, through yoga, through Reiki, and other methods, when enough people are under their control, there's going to be this thing called the coming together time. And when that happens, it'll just, be instantaneous. There won't be much resistance, as the Spirit put it. And I think many of you are thinking that you know probably what the coming together time is. If not, we'll talk about it later. The Spirit said, you must be exactly where you are, doing exactly what you are doing. See, this woman just wanted to get healing from her shoulder. Now she's working for them. She's working for them. We, it's not I. We cannot stress how vital that is to the overall work that is happening in Portland and everywhere right now. Trust. Everywhere. That would include Cork. The Master will guide. Do not have concern. It is all happening. Make inner guidance commonplace. Get it out there for the everyman. In other words, tell people about Reiki. Get out there and promote this. And then the Spirit says, I love you, Storma. Nothing is more important than to be a clear, resonating vessel to channel through the will of the universe. Trust in me, your Lord. So now, we find out that this spirit guide is her Lord. You know, her master. The Master will guide. Trust in me, your Lord. So, I think you're starting to understand that what maybe appeared so innocent and so benign or even beneficial before now has a spiritual underside that can be quite sinister. Okay. Uh-oh. How do we get through that? How did that happen? Yeah, we were working on it. Last night, and I guess we didn't proofread well enough. Well, I guess these things are good. It keeps you humble, right? You don't want to get a big head. You don't want to get puffed up. Okay, probably the best verse in the Bible, there are many of them, but the one that stands out the most is Leviticus 19:31. Regard not them that have familiar spirits, neither seek after wizards to be defiled by them. I am the Lord your God. Okay, that word spirit, when enough of you are united in spirit, that term spirit, actually what that means is what the Bible calls familiar spirits. And wizards are people that have familiar spirits. In essence, Reiki masters, Reiki channelers are wizards. You don't have to have one of these gowns with the tall pointy hat with the half moon on it. In essence, Wiccans are wizards. A wizard is someone who, in the Hebrew there, the word means a knowing one. A knowing one, someone who has knowledge of these other realms, these other worlds. And when you connect with them, you're defiled by them. And what we just saw, trust in me, your Lord. Now, wouldn't you say that from a theological perspective, wouldn't you say that from a religious, spiritual perspective, that this woman had been defiled? If indeed humanity's purpose in life is to worship the God that created them, and now this woman is, worshiping a rebel against the true God, wouldn't you call that defilement? This idea, like yoga, we are all born divine. Namaste, the God in me bows down to the God in you. Romans 7:18, I know nothing good dwells within me, that is, in my flesh. Apostle Paul writing that within him, there's nothing good within him. There are none righteous, no, not one. See, this is where I'm sure all of you, when you saw that about yoga, you knew that really conflicts with what the Bible teaches. That really conflicts with the Christian gospel, right? Yeah, like you're on the streets telling people about Jesus, and their need for salvation. According to yoga, they don't need salvation. They need higher consciousness. They need to understand who they really are. Psalm 39:5. Verily, every man. This is like a comedy of errors here. Verily, every man at his best state is altogether vanity or emptiness. Every man in his best state is altogether vanity. Humanity is in need of a Savior. So what's this view of, well, you are God, we're all divine. Isaiah 14:14, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. That is Lucifer's quote in the book of Isaiah. Notice Lucifer doesn't say, I will be the Most High, right? It doesn't say I will be the Most High. I will be like the Most High. Like the Most High. So anything, A lot of people, you know, they when they think of the word demonic or Satan or the devil or whatever, they think of a very sinister thing. I mean, like The Exorcist or, you know, really bizarre things like that. But in essence, anything that smacks of the creature is like the Creator is satanic, is Lucifer. I will be like the Most High. And that is what we find throughout all these practices that I've been showing you. From mindfulness to yoga to Reiki to Wicca. You know, Wicca has the same thing, you know, that God is in everything, you know, that we are basically divine. You know, Wicca is not the overt worship of the devil. Wiccans claim they don't even believe in the devil. You know, that's true. You know, witches or Wiccans totally disavow that they're Satan worshippers because they believe that God is in everybody. So, you know, you know what they say? You'll find this interesting. Wiccans will say, you have to be a Christian to be a Satan worshiper. You have to be a Christian because only Christians believe in Satan. You see what I'm talking about? See, they don't believe in Satan. They don't believe there's a being like Satan that exists. So therefore, if you're a Satan worshiper, you're kind of a Christian because Satan is in the Christian religion. Yeah, it's kind of hard to understand, but you see the point there? So they reject the idea that they're worshiping anything evil. But what makes all this evil is, I will be like the Most High. Okay, what it boils down to, what the controversy is, the preaching of the cross versus the preaching of the higher self. That term higher self is the term for your inner divinity, your inner God, which in reality would be a familiar spirit. See, these spirits, they come and they masquerade. They tell you that they are your higher self. The term higher self is probably the central theme of New Age spirituality. And it's not just the higher self isn't just some kind of ethical or moral thing, you know, like you help people, like, you do good works. Your higher self is actually an entity. It's actually a presence. Deepak Chopra is one of the major leaders of New Age spirituality. He says, if there is such a thing as God consciousness, no one can be excluded from it. That's another controversy, that within the New Age, no one can be excluded from God. I mean, no one. You can be the worst person in the world. You can be the most hideous, cruel, monstrous person that exists, and you can never be excluded from God. One of the reasons, or not one of the reasons, the main reason that man is excluded from God is because of his sin. Right? Man is excluded from God because of his sin. So, sin is not even an issue in this realm. You know, no one is excluded from God because God is in everything and everybody. There's no way you can be excluded. So our response is, for if when we were enemies, that's the fallen man, you know, unsaved man, unregenerate man. For if when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more being reconciled, we shall be saved by his life. That's the preaching of the cross. You know, we were reconciled to God by the cross, and we shall be saved by his life, his resurrection. For the preaching of the cross, is to them that perish foolishness, but unto us which are saved, it is the power of God. Unto us which are saved. You know, the New Age doesn't even have a concept of salvation. It has a concept of enlightenment, like in mindfulness. You know, you're connected to the divine by meditation. Remember in that magazine, that Costco magazine, you know, this used to be considered New Agey, you know, weird stuff, crazy, strange stuff, no more. Now, this is the religion of the Western world. That's why in the bookstore there in Cork here, just a few blocks from here, I'm talking about just a few blocks, there, you saw it, and there's a number of people in this room who who can attest to it. The religion section is like 6 shelves, and only 2 are devoted to some semblance of Christianity, but 28 shelves are purely devoted to, New Age stuff. So we're looking at 2 versus 28. I think there's been quite a paradigm shift. I think there's been quite a turn toward this. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name. So you can have a relationship with God, but you have to receive him. You have to accept him by faith. You have to respond to the gospel. This kind of sums it up. This can't go on forever, ladies and gentlemen. This cannot go on forever. People have to make a decision right now. They can't wait. This kind of makes it clear. This is a book by this woman's a medium, New Ager, Awaken the Spirit Within. And you can see if there are 10 steps to ignite your life and fulfill your divine purpose. And she says, the unseen world, our guides, again, she has guides, are present with us every day, waiting for us to call on them to lovingly guide us along and wake up to who we truly are. In other words, there's all these spirits out there, and they're just waiting for you to attune to them so they can teach you who you truly are, and that is you are God. You are God. But this is the sad consequence. This is a medium named Arthur Ford. He had a spirit guide for 43 years. And when he died, his last words were, God help me, as he passed into the arms of his spirit guide. And that's not something you say in a positive sense. You don't say, God help me. I believe it was, he realized the mistake he had made. He realized what his destiny was. I don't know how. I can't explain the particulars. But all I know is, if it was a good experience, he wouldn't say, God help me, right? You agree? Well, this is how he got into it. According to Ford, it was Swami Yogananda who first instructed him on how to meditate and how to enter a trance state by himself, which allowed him to make contact with the world of spirit. So he got his spirit guide by doing yoga. This Arthur Ford, he was taught it by a Hindu Swami. In meditation, that's the doorway. Between worlds, that's the key. So he wound up with his spirit guide just by doing yoga. This was backed up by another famous occultist, John C. White. Learning how to meditate was perhaps the most important event in my life. By doing meditation, yoga, or whatever you do as a discipline, you can set up your environment so the spirits can come and work with you. And remember, yoga means union. Yoga means union. So there is a union. If you're really into yoga, you're really committed, you really want to do it, get into it, you're going to be united with something. And I pray that people that see this and are doing yoga, that they're not united with, they don't have the same experience that Arthur Ford did.